Back when I was a kid growing up in the very early 2000s, my favorite video game console of choice was the very first PlayStation. Even though the second PlayStation was just coming out at that point, I still really got a lot of enjoyment from games like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, and also a couple other games I was kind of too young to understand, but still played them anyway, because, I was bored. But one thing I noticed in retrospect for the PlayStation 1 and 2 were how many sports games both of them had. Both regular conventional sports like football and baseball, and also extreme sports games that included like, BMX and skateboarding, the latter kind of sports being my favorite, of course. But one thing I really think hit these games home were the soundtracks that were included. I'd be very hard pressed to find somebody who wasn't at least a little bit influenced by these games, if not having their taste completely derived from these video games in some extreme cases. So what I want to do is, with the first PlayStation, is go over 5 games that I think have amazing soundtracks that you absolutely need to check out. The game might not be that great, but the soundtracks make up for them. Only in some cases with these. So without further ado, let's go over some awesome fucking game soundtracks. Number 5, MTV Sports Snowboarding. I'm going to start this list off with a couple more obscure titles in the sense that they weren't as popular as the later entries, but that's for obvious reasons. This game, though not the best snowboarding game in the world, is still pretty fun if you get the hang of it. What it might lack makes up for itself with its amazing soundtrack. It's actually one of my most memorable because I discovered a lot of my favorite punk rock bands through this game. Some of these bands include Lagwagon, Face to Face, 10 Foot Pole, Pulley, Voodoo Glow Skulls, and a couple of lesser known Blink-182 songs. Those 2 songs, still to this day, are my favorite songs by Blink of all time. Number 4, TJ Lavins Ultimate BMX. Again, maybe not one of the best games in its respective extreme sport, but if you really do like extreme sports games, you should really check out every entry on this list, because they're all extreme sports games. Anyways, this soundtrack is one of the most influential for me by far, because a lot of the punk bands I listened to in high school, I discovered through this game. Some of those bands include Frenzal Romp, Millencolin, and Unwritten Law. Still, some of my favorite bands to this day. Another thing that's worth mentioning is the rise of nu metal influencing this kind of soundtrack as well. Because of it, POD and 187 were also included in this game, and it honestly fit just as well as the other punk rock bands. It made for a pretty diverse soundtrack, I must say. Number 3, Thrasher Skate and Destroy. I didn't necessarily grow up with this one, but after hearing about it in the online skate community, as soon as I found myself a copy, I snagged that thing. Me being used to more punk-centered soundtracks, I was kind of taken aback by this one being just completely hip-hop and rap. But it was in a good way because all of this hip-hop and rap was from the golden age. Some of the rap groups that were included in this game include the Sugar Hill Gang, Public Enemy, Run DMC, Gangstar, and one of my all-time favorite discoveries from this game was A Tribe Called Quest. There's something about that song Award Tour that I just cannot get enough of. It is such a good song, and it matches so well with skateboarding. I recommend this game to any and every skateboarding enthusiast, but I will say one thing. It's fun once you get over the very steep learning curve. Number 2, Matt Hoffman's Pro BMX. Again, another game that I didn't necessarily grow up with, but I discovered through a book, of all things. According to Tony Hawk's Gaming Domination, the rise and fall of the Hawk Gaming franchise, and I am paraphrasing here, the game is basically Tony Hawk on a bike, in an extremely literal sense, because they basically use the same gaming engine. I think what gives off a similar feeling to discovering new music from a video game is finding music you recognize in a video game, which is exactly what happened when I played this game for the first time at age 22. Some bands I recognized are Pennywise, Bad Brains, 10 Foot Pole, Deltron 3030, and Agent Orange. A couple I discovered include Apocalypse Hoboken, the rapper Paris, and 20 Minute Crash. whom I can't find anything about. But still, a very diverse soundtrack. Number 1, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. This is the game that really kickstarted my love for extreme sports games and their soundtracks alike. It was not only my first Tony Hawk game I ever owned, but I have reason to believe it's one of the very first video games I ever played. I understand the PlayStation 2 version was a lot more well received, and I can understand for obvious reasons. More levels, more songs, and I can understand why it's just more well received. I have a copy of both versions and I really enjoy both of them. The point is, because of this installment in the series, I was introduced to punk rock. Some of the bands that were included in this soundtrack were Agent Orange, The Bouncing Souls, Avail, Goldfinger, The Distillers, Zeke, and early Offspring, just to name a few. Some rap groups I discovered through this game were like Delinquent Habits, Run DMC, and Public Enemy. When you first start a career mode, they play the songs alphabetically from the band names, and because of that, Bloodstains by Agent Orange was the very, very first punk rock song I think I ever heard. The cool thing about this is about 14, 15 years later, I got to see Agent Orange live, and I got to meet and talk with their lead singer, Mike Palm. Coolest dude ever. Just the sentimental value alone puts this on this list as one of my favorites of all time. And believe me, it was quite a battle between this one and Pro Skater 3 for me, because both of those I really enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching this list. I had a lot of fun making it. If this video gets well received or a good amount of views, I might make another one of these, maybe about more PlayStation 1 games or a further generation like the PlayStation 2. That's going to be a hard list to make, but I'm willing if people are willing to watch it. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the next video.